one of the things you could gain is waking up to the illusion that exists for most couples, in most situations. And this really happens for everyone, is this projection. Your partner becomes a source of your pain instead of the source of your pleasure, right? You are the reason I'm unhappy. You are the reason that I'm not doing well. You're the reason that I'm frustrated. And that's not typically true. What's more often true is the partner's only triggering the pain, and the pain comes from childhood.
Welcome to the Power Plant Body Podcast. My name is Taylor, and this show is focused on self-development. I've found in my own life, as well as the lives of my clients that I've worked with, that it's human nature to focus on goals in one area of life, or maybe two areas of life if you're lucky, to the detriment of the other areas of your life. For this reason, there's a tool that I use with my clients called the Goal Wheel that is specifically designed to shed light on how you might be preventing yourself from living the fullest life possible. In a nutshell, the Goal Wheel is a circle drawn on a piece of paper that's being divided into 8 quadrants. The 8 quadrants are family and friends, romance, fun and recreation, health and fitness, finances, personal growth and spirituality, career, and physical environment. Basically, you give yourself a score between 1 and 10 for each of these areas of your life, and that allows you to see where you're excelling and putting your attention. But it also shows you the areas of your life that you're currently neglecting. The areas of life that we neglect are often the areas that we need to work on the most. And that's exactly why I started this podcast, to share insights from teachers who are experts in one or more of these areas of the Goal Wheel. Each interview is meant to inspire you to take action in one of those areas so that you can live a more fulfilled and balanced life. To get your hands on a free copy of the Goal Wheel PDF so that you can use it to create meaningful goals and take steps to achieve them, head over to powerplantbody.com/free-tools. You'll find a bunch of other free tools and resources there as well. I've mentioned a number of times on my YouTube channel and social media that men's work has been one of the greatest gifts that I've ever given myself. Nick Solaczek is my guest today, and he's been on the leading edge of men's work in the Vancouver area for a number of years. In fact, he was the MC when I went to my first men's work open house over 4 years ago and ultimately made the decision to invest myself in men's work. In our conversation today, Nick shares his story of why he got into personal development and men's work and how it's helped him cultivate the tools to create conscious, meaningful, constructive relationships with the people in his life. In fact, doing this work helped him find his true purpose, which is coaching people to build meaningful relationships by consciously co-creating what he calls the space between. Nick is a very thoughtful, insightful, and heart-driven man. He's a man that I look up to for his leadership skills and ability to meet others with where they're at in order to create a space to help lift them up to where they'd like to be. If you've ever wondered what goes into building a meaningful relationship, whether you're in one right now that maybe is on the rocks, or you'd like to find a partner with whom to build something greater, then today's episode is for you. So without any further delay, I bring you my conversation with Nick Solaczek. All right, Nick. Well, I appreciate you being on the podcast. I've known you for a number of years, and the way I know you is through men's work. You were actually, when I went to a Samurai Brotherhood open house, you were the primary speaker, really. There were other brothers that got up and spoke as well, but you were the MC for the evening. That was my introduction to you, and I've always felt like you were a man who exudes this kind of wonder, and also wonder for the world around him, but also like a sense of power that comes from the work that you've done as a man, and that you help other men do. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation today, because I know that there's a wealth of information that I'll learn from you, but a wealth of information you can provide to other men and women who are listening to this podcast as well. I would love to invite you just to give us to tell us who you are, how you came to be in men's work and involved in the way you are, and what you're doing currently.
Thank you. Well, it's great to be here. Thank you for the generous introduction. I think that if there's anything about me that is attractive, that people are drawn to, it's probably because I've just hung around some great teachers and taken notes and kept at it and gone out and tried things. And I think that's how confidence is built, right? We sort of go out and practice, make mistakes, and carry on, distill the good, distill the lessons, and keep going. So, how I think of myself right now in the world is a facilitator. I often use the word coach, and really what I'm focused on and what I find myself talking about a lot is the space between people. And that in a way is a little bit of a new age concept, the way that romantic relationships are framed, the way that people can think about their relationship as it actually exists between the two of them. So I work with individuals, men and women, who are single and wanting to get into relationship. And I also work with couples who are in relationship. And I am in a romantic relationship myself, so I'll have to practice what I preach. And that's a great school that I'm enrolled in itself. Mm-hmm. And I also am a leader in the Samurai Brotherhood and work to keep that organization moving forward and training new leaders and keeping the essence and the integrity of that organization as it expands, as it grows to other countries, other continents. And it's a fun project.
Yeah, it's been amazing how quickly that organization has grown and how much value so many of the members have gotten out of it. You mentioned the teachers along the way of your journey, and something that comes up often in men's work and what we speak about is the hero's journey, right? That journey of through the learning process and back to give your gift of what you've learned to the community around you. When you think about where you are today on that journey, if you could go back and look at the moments or the events in your life that were the call to adventure, what was Nick like before that call to adventure? And what was it that called you into action to become the version of yourself that you are today?
Well, I think I've always been curious. And there's a relationship teacher named Harville Hendricks, and he wrote a great book called Getting the Love You Want, which I recommend that everyone read. But, he has this question, which is, why does the dream become the nightmare? Why does the dream of romantic relationship and that union with another person sometimes, and often become a nightmare? And why is there so much divorce? And, in his process, he found himself in divorce court 10 years after a 10-year marriage, and had that sense of double failure. Like, he's a therapist, and he teaches people relationship, and his marriage is ending. And I think, anyone who's in personal development or is a therapist would probably feel the same way. But my point is, I kind of had that question too as a kid. Why is it that people don't seem to be able to resolve conflicts? And why is it that they are not taking an empowered approach to situations? And, I saw that in my own family system where, we've all got our unique talents and personalities and our backgrounds, but an inability to talk about things in a way, a lack of confidence about that. And, I think for me, I went to business school right out of high school, and that started an interesting growth trajectory for me because I was 18 years old and I was the young buck. And I noticed that people would be 10 or 15 years older than me, but didn't have a sense of confidence about some of the things that they were doing, were unable to solve problems. And so right there, I guess I'm naturally sort of a competitive person, but I realized wow, I'm a young guy and I've actually got some value to contribute here. And certainly was humbled in the process, but it was a great growth experience. It forced me to give up Xbox, and really actually I wasn't going to survive business school if I wasn't focused. And I made some great friendships in the process. And so I think that was kind of a catalyst for me coming out of high school. It was a really, really intense program. Take 8 courses, 7 courses at a time, and big projects. And, after I came out of that experience of 5 years getting a business degree and working part-time, I really wanted to just screw off, and I wanted to leave the country and I wanted to go traveling. And I was worried that I would get into that sort of stereotypical situation where I got locked down with a house and a mortgage and a wife, kids, and a dog, and I'm never going to see the world.
Yeah.
And it's something that I really love to do is travel. So I quit everything and I went to Australia, and I was actually playing poker for a living. And
I had no idea about that.
Yeah, I had, and just so everyone who's listening, you can be a professional at anything as long as you don't have any other source of income. So being a professional poker player, even if you make $100 a year, it's what you do for a living, you're a pro.
Nice.
So you can do it too. But I had some really great experiences playing in the World Series of Poker and playing in big tournaments and playing in big cash games. And that was a lot of fun. I think at the end of the day, after that experience, I really came home with a lot of memories, a lot of great photos, a lot of amazing experiences, but not a lot of cash in my jeans. Mm-hmm. And that's because I made some critical mistakes that people make in investing, people make in poker and gambling. And now it's a hobby of mine. I participate in that. But I think that what I'm saying here is that, as a young kid, I had parents that, definitely supported me. I was lucky that I had that. But I also got involved and tried experiences that were really going to test and challenge me. And sometimes you do think something, wanting a certain outcome, and you get something else. That's probably how most of life works. And sometimes you get what you need. Mm-hmm. So I think I had this really, really big adventure of traveling the world and playing poker and sort of being reckless and being a rebel, I guess is what I thought, is I'm not going to work a 9 to 5. I'm not going to do anything that, anyone tells me I'm going to do. And I'm going to go be a pirate and play, poker. And it actually turned out to be a very unhealthy lifestyle. And I love the game, and I hope that it's always part of my life, but I certainly don't want to do it full time. So I know that's maybe partially an answer to your question, but I think that's where kind of my journey started. And I never really wanted a conventional career. Mm-hmm. And in some ways, I'm doing something conventional that I talk with people in a sort of a therapeutic container. Mm-hmm. But to me, it's actually kind of radical, and it's can be revolutionary for an individual. The sense of personal awakening and empowerment, because I think that a lot of people struggle with that. How do I be myself in my family system? How do I communicate authentically to my partner? How do I tell the microscopic truth about who I am without, succumbing to a crippling fear of maybe I won't be accepted, or I'm going to be rejected, or the truth about me is going to end or rupture my partnership or my relationship or my connections to my family. Mm.
There's a couple different places I want to go here. I want to learn more about I want to learn about the space between that you're talking about. That sounds like there's a lot of fruit there. Before we move there, it's a big piece of men's work. A big piece of the work that we do in our circles is trying to form some semblance of the rite of passage that was missing in our growing up as a youth, right? The rite of passage that so many men had before just a few hundred years ago. When you think about your journey where you are today, and it sounds like that you were in this container business school and you were doing really well, and you had this the competitiveness in you was allowed to shine, but on the other end of that, you felt like this call to adventure. You felt a call to break away from a vision of being compartmentalized, like you were saying, in a mortgage and wife and kids and all that sort of thing. Is there any moment that you can see looking back from where you are today that feels like it could have been that separation from the boy, the irresponsibilities of the boy to the version of yourself right now, which is like this, the generative man, the man with responsibility, the teacher. Was there any moment that you made that leap? And were there any teachers along the way that you can point back to that helped you see that future for what it was?
Yeah, I think I've had some big moments for sure, but there's two that stand out. One is I came back from my travels as a poker player, and had really no money. Like I had $3,000 in my bank account, and I think I actually had some debt. And I moved back into my parents' basement. And that was not great for me. I didn't feel proud about that. I felt like a failure. And it forced me to take stock, take inventory and decide what I was going to do. I had to do something. I had to take action. And in fact, I did go get a 9-to-5 job in software sales. And that did some good things for me and put me in a little bit of a better position. And after that, I did go traveling again. I wasn't done. But, there's that moment where I was really humbled. And, there's moments where you get to eat that humbled pie and you kind of eat shit. And that's really good, I think, and healthy for the ego. And I think as a younger guy, I kind of maybe did have a little chip on my shoulder, or, I was the guy at graduation who made a joke on camera to, the crew that was filming, saying, I was teasing the librarian, saying, one day I'm going to drive by in my Ferrari and just throw some bags of money out the window to the peasants, right?
Right.
Really kind of just cringy type stuff. And so there's that moment, and there's another moment where the year was 2016, and the timeline's foggy, but I'll just tell you that I wasn't in a good place financially. I tried to do artist management. I tried to get some stuff going in the music business. I was really trying to avoid working for anyone. I really just wanted to do my own thing, and I felt challenged, and I felt like I wasn't able to really make good money in the way that I wanted to. And so here I was again, sort of having to start over. And I went and got a regular job, and I actually ended up at a car dealership. And it was around this time that the Samurai Brotherhood actually started a year earlier. So it was around this time that year I actually started my own squad under Phil's mentorship. And there's something great about that, because I wasn't thriving financially. I didn't have it all made. I wasn't crushing it, so to speak. But I was engaged in my own personal work, and I was asking questions about myself and the kind of work I want to do. What is my purpose? What is my holy grail? How is it going to turn out for me? How am I going to make this work in the way that I want? And as it turns out, that car dealership actually gave me exactly what I needed, which was just a little bit of paycheck to pay my bills, a little bit of money in the bank, but time to think about and sit with, where I was at, and just sitting with that feeling that no one's going to come save me, and I've got to do it myself. And I think, to some extent, I just needed to suffer enough to make a change and to take action. So the moment I'm getting to here is it's a bright sunny morning, and my routine was typically I would sleep in a bit because I hated my job. And just a little insight there, I was shuttling customers around for the dealership. I was moving cars. I was valeting vehicles. I washed cars just to entertain myself sometimes. And I wasn't making a lot of dough. So I would get in a car share typically, and I'd rip to the SkyTrain line so that I could get to the other side, jump off and run to the dealership to get there on time and punch the clock. So I'm in this Evo. I'm doing 90 kilometers an hour in a 50 zone, and a cop tags me on a bike and pulls me over. Now, for those of you who don't know, if you get an excessive speeding ticket, at least in British Columbia, you're going to get a fine, but they're also going to impound the vehicle. And it's a car share. It's not my vehicle, so you pay a fee every day. Anyway, this is a couple $1,000. And at the end of this interaction with the police officer, he says to me, hey, do you want me to call you a cab? And I said, no, I think I'm going to walk. I was going to walk to the nearest bus stop. And so I had a lot of sort of shame and frustration and anger and feeling, like really big emotion in that moment about what had just happened. Because I was making $2,000 a month at that point, and I had personal debt. And this moment would cost me a couple of grand. I just couldn't afford it. I was really already in a tough spot, I felt. And I remember walking. It took me 2-3 minutes to get to the next bus stop. And I had been listening to, over the month prior, a book by Ryan Holiday called The Obstacle is the Way. So I basically, in that moment, took his teaching and what he was saying there about Stoic philosophy and personal empowerment, and just decided that I wasn't going to let this moment, I wasn't going to let my past, I wasn't going to let any of the things that I thought, I had failed at, determine how it was going to be for me. And I wasn't going to let this moment beat me down. And I was going to make a change. So I went to the dealership that day and was feeling like, this is not working for me, I'm not making enough money, I don't like my life. And within 48 hours, I approached the general manager and asked if I could start selling cars. And never done that before, but thought, maybe I'd be good at it. And what happened there was I gained confidence at something new that I hadn't done before, working on 100% commission. So you eat what you kill. And that was a great experience for me because it tested me in a lot of ways, like any sort of sales job will. Is really going to test your mindset and how much you believe in yourself, and whether you're going to let somebody, get you down by not completing a sale or not moving forward. And when you're a personal coach and you eat what you kill as well, in a way. Like if people don't know you or they don't sign up to work with you, you don't get paid. So I think that really, really gave me a foundation to do what I'm doing now. And in a roundabout way, I would have never expected it to happen like that.
I love that story. That's I felt that when you're talking about getting pulled over and getting that car impounded and the fine, and just experiencing like all that, thinking about all the dollars that are going to be charged to your account that you don't even have the money in to pay it off in the first place. That's I think I've felt something similar, and most people have had that moment where they're just like, what the heck? Like, why is the universe just shit kicking me right now? But being able to turn it into something that catapults you into a new direction the way that you did. And from my experience with you, the way that you help people coach them through that process as well is so worthwhile. So moving into that coaching practice, how I've known you is through men's work. And in men's work, the circles that I've been a part of, something that comes up and is a big part of the process is deepening relationship, whether that's with your family or your friends, and quite often romantically. For you, when we first started this conversation, you talked about, well, you coach relationship first and foremost, but you talked about the space between two people in a relationship that you coach people through to generate. What is that space that you're talking about between two people? And it sounds like it's not in a lot of relationship, or maybe it's fleeting. And why is that?
So the first question is, what is the space between? And the second part of that was, last part I heard was, it's fleeting. Can you repeat that for me?
Oh, yeah. So you coach people to create this space between themselves and relationship, which would lead me to believe that it doesn't exist in a lot of people's relationships, or if it does, it's very fleeting, right? They're not proactively going about creating it. So why is that? But let's talk about the space between first.
So there's a deep evolutionary and psychological journey there that we could talk about. But the space between, the way to think about that is the relationship between two people is in that space. And so it's a great metaphor because people understand physical dimensions, and you and me could sit across from each other and understand, so a space between us here. Mm-hmm. And so what we put into that space is the relationship. And the reason this works and people really get a sense of it is, if that's true, right, if the relationship exists between the two of us, and I yell, and I complain, and I nag, and maybe I hit you, right, I'm putting this energy into our relationship. And that's really interesting, because the way that a lot of people resolve conflict, or the way that people deal with things they don't like in relationships sometimes, is to attack, is to criticize, is to blame or point fingers, yell, raise their voice, get really, really, intense. And there's a lot of reasons that they do that, right? These are really just survival strategies that we learned as kids, right? The infant, for example, when the mother or the father does not attend to it, might get louder, might start screaming louder and more noise and with more intensity until the parent comes and says, okay, it's okay, right? It's that sort of thing that we need as infants, is like co-regulation. So for couples, one of the ways that they can really benefit from that teaching is to think about what they're putting into the space between, what they're putting into the relationship. And some teachers use different metaphors. The garden is a popular one. For example, are you watering the garden? Are you nourishing it? Are you putting positive energy into it? Are you showing appreciation to your partner? Are you further differentiating, who you are in relationship to your partner? Like, for example, some people, everyone has things that they want to get out of a relationship, right? Their personal needs, things that they're excited to have, things that they yearn for. But often we're not so good at getting those things. We're not so good at communicating about those. And we kind of actually sign our partners up unconsciously for this role of making us feel loved and appreciated and whole, to give us that aliveness that maybe we felt as young children. And we also kind of expect that there's not much we've got to do in return. So you can see how two people having a covert kind of arrangement like that with each other would be a recipe for disaster. So, space between really is, what am I putting into this? And am I contributing in a positive or a negative way? Is this helpful? Is this style of communication helpful? And it takes time to work on that, obviously, because our responses are really coming sometimes from a primitive place, like the oldest part of our brain as an innate directive to survive. So if our partner does something that's really threatening, or hits at the heart of something that happened to us as a child, or something that happened earlier in our life that was deeply painful, boom, danger, right? Now we're like, okay, red alert, the alarms are going off, and it's easy for people to act in really intense ways because they feel like maybe their relationship or their life is on the line. And that's a problem, because one of the most important things for couples is safety, a sense of safety, that it's safe to be here and I'm not under threat, and it's safe to be who I am. It's safe to talk about my thoughts, my feelings, and that there's a sense of having each other's back, which is one of the teachings we have in the Brotherhood. I've got your back. I support you. And it doesn't mean, for brothers in the Brotherhood, it doesn't mean I'm going to be your best friend or we're going to hang out every day. But hey, if you need me, if you're looking for resources, hey, I'm here. I'll make myself available. And I wish you the best. So I'm on a bit of a tangent there, but the second part of your question was about why is it fleeting, right? Why does that sort of initial experience change for people? And part of this is actually because we're just high on chemicals. So what science kind of tells us is that early on in the romantic relationship, we are just high, and all the love chemicals are flowing. And, similar to maybe bodybuilding, right? You get a bit of a high from that, you know about, and probably some of your listeners know about. So when those chemicals fade off in a romantic relationship, people find themselves in what would be referred to as the power struggle, and people can get fixated on their unmet needs in that place. And typically, what's going on is both individual has personal wounding from childhood that's getting activated, so to speak, would be fair to say. And I don't think, personally, I don't believe that most people have a great model. They didn't have great teachers for resolving conflict, for really fostering safety and developing trust and building that emotional attunement that's required for romantic partners. And we probably didn't have great teachers about a lot of things: health and fitness, money, love, right? We really didn't have classes for this in school. It wasn't an emphasis on that. And a lot of the teachings we got, like, the classic food pyramid example, was funded by particular organizations, and there was a bias and maybe a little off the mark in terms of what's best for us. So, there's something beautiful in that. We can have compassion for ourselves that, hey, no one taught me. And if you're willing to take that on, say, okay, it's okay, no one taught me. I can learn. There's a responsibility there. There's an opportunity to grow and opportunity to have more of what you want out of life. I think that there's a big opportunity there for couples if they're brave enough, willing enough, open enough to engage in that conversation.
The couples that are brave enough to engage in that conversation, that are willing to take ownership of their relationship, that space between that you talk about. In the initial part of a relationship, it's the chemical fun, right? The physical attraction, that chemical soup that's causing you to feel high, right? In some way, shape, or form. Once that's no longer a part of the relationship, once it's just you and your partner and the space between, and you want to fill it up consciously with things that are benefiting both of you, right? Like you don't have these covert contracts that you're talking about. You're looking out for the building of something greater than the two of you combined, the space between. Why would we want to do that? Once the chemicals are gone, once the initial physical attraction is gone, and we're just left with each other, and there's a space between us, what is the benefit of working on that space between? What are we putting into it, and what can the couple expect to get out of that work, that process?
Well, no one wants to be in a nightmare relationship. Mm-hmm. Right? Nobody wants to be with a romantic partner, living with a romantic partner, have children and commitments and build a family that is not a good experience. People want to have a great experience. They want to feel connected. They want to feel alive. And what I'm speaking to is that there's the desire and the dream that people have, and then there's road bumps, there's speed bumps along the way. There's sort of pitfalls and traps that we can get into. Mm-hmm. So not all couples are in this place. A lot of people are happy and having a great time. But also a lot of people have maybe a feeling of ambivalence. A lot of people avoid conversations. And in men's work, they have a term for that, which is sort of like the nice guy. Mm-hmm. Who maybe just smiles and, hey, it's okay, everything's okay. And there's an avoidance of actually maybe their own anger or frustration. There's an avoidance sometimes of our own needs. Men and women both do this, right? Mm-hmm. It's all about the other person. It's all about how do you feel and what do you want versus, what is important to me. Mm-hmm. And so I think that, the reasons that couples get involved are really that, they're in pain. And sometimes one partner drags the other one into a therapeutic container or into therapy because one person's resistant and one person really, is more open to it. Mm-hmm. But the truth is when you're intimate with another person, you're going to get triggered. Mm-hmm. You're going to get upset. And I think that is why people get to a place. The reason why people get to a place is they just don't know how to resolve that. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple things missing. We don't want to have a negative experience. We want to have a positive experience. Mm-hmm. We want our partner to be able to understand how we feel. Not totally agree, but just to understand. Mm-hmm. And, we want to be able to also talk about things without moments escalating into intensity or without the conversation escalating into an argument or a fight. And I think that skill set, I'm talking about mastery here, is how can two people talk about any issue in their partnership? How can they work through that with a sense of respect and with a sense of love and compassion for one another? And the truth is these are skills. These are skills that you can learn. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people come to this work because they want to be in a thriving relationship and they want it to work. They want that sense of healing that we're all looking for in a relationship, and we want it to be often in the personal development space. People think of it sort of as a great growth experience. I mean, relationships are the ultimate personal development machine.
I'd like to dive more into that. What people can get out of a positive relationship, because as you said, like so many people experience relationship in to use a word that gets thrown around a lot, toxic. It's a toxic relationship, right? Things get brought up from childhood, or you get triggered from previous relationships. And at the end of the day, you stay in the relationship for one reason or another, but it's not doing anybody any good, right? Maybe there's work there to be done that could turn it into a constructive relationship, but currently in its current state, it's not positive for either party. Then there's also like you mentioned when you were younger, before you went traveling, you had, obviously you were quite young at the time, but you had that thought of, I don't want to be locked down into a marriage and mortgage and kids. I want to be free. I want to travel the world, right? There's when you make one decision, there's an infinite number of decisions that you can no longer make because you've made this decision. So that's maybe a long-winded way of saying, if someone does decide to make this decision to work on the relationship, whether they're in relationship currently and it's not working, or if they want to find someone to build that garden space between them with, you said it's the ultimate personal development. It's the ultimate space for personal development. Can we talk about what is contained in there, that, like, what are the gifts that bear from a garden between two people?
Well, I think there's a lot, and I'll just going to say one thing, sort of off the back of that question, which is, one of the things you could gain is waking up to the illusion that exists, which is that for most people, and there's some extreme situations, right, where there's abuse. Mm-hmm. And I think that if anyone's in an abusive relationship, the best thing probably to do is just to get out, just to get out of that circumstance and take some space for that, to gain some clarity about what's going on. Maybe do some personal work of your own to see why it is that you feel maybe you couldn't get out, or why you let people treat you that way, and go on that journey. But abuse is a complicated topic. So what I'm kind of speaking about is, for most couples, most situations, and this really happens for everyone, is this projection. Your partner becomes a source of your pain instead of the source of your pleasure, right? You are the reason I'm unhappy. You are the reason that I'm not doing well. You're the reason that I'm frustrated. And that's not typically true. What's more often true is the partner's only triggering the pain, and the pain comes from childhood. Pain comes from childhood. And so in working with couples on this, I kind of see it over and over again as people get caught in a vulnerability cycle. So I think individuals in a relationship that get trapped inside of a hidden experience in your own mind, right, which might be called intrapsychic. So it's in your mind, nobody knows about it.
Right.
And you have this frustration. You have this projection that they're causing me pain. And then it becomes expressed interpersonally. So there's a part of the journey that's hidden in your own mind, and then boom, maybe it's a lashing out, maybe it's a rude comment, maybe it's a criticism of some kind, or it comes to a boiling point. And put it simply, I think one of the things that in couples therapy, that we use the term emotional symbiosis. So the power struggle energy is really a lot like, I want you to be more like me. I want you to see the world the way that I see it. I want you to feel the way that I feel about it. And then all will be right in the world, and I'll feel good in this relationship, and you'll be right instead of wrong, right? Because the way that I see it is obviously the right way.
If only it were that easy.
Right, yeah. But obviously it doesn't work that way. We're all individuals with unique preferences and wants and desires and dreams. And so, when people feel in pain, it's easy to construct a world that's in service of ourselves if we're hurting. And so if you're in a relationship where you're hurting, your partner's made some hurtful comments, or they don't accept you for some reason, or they're very judgmental, constructing a world in service of yourself can also look like pulling away, going into the turtle shell and keeping things to yourself, or thinking that maybe it's time to leave the relationship. And, sometimes that's true. I think that encourage people to go deep versus to go long. And hopefully by going deep with one another, they do have an enjoyable experience of being together. And they can develop that sense of resiliency, by doing so, by engaging in the process. So in terms of what people get out of it, I think resiliency is one for sure. But also, instead of being maybe on a volatile, up and down, they have some, smoother waters. And I'll tell you, something called the moment of emergence, which comes from Catherine and Gay Hendricks' work, moment of emergence, which is there's a stimulus outside of yourself, and then there's something that goes on inside of yourself. And depending on how you deal with that emotion, that feeling, whatever's coming up, you really can change your life, because you could get angry, you could explode, you could burn the house down. Or you could just say out loud, wow, this makes me so angry. And I think that's because it reminds me of this thing from before, or this thing from childhood. And you know what? I think I need to take a walk. I think I need some space, because I respect you, I love you, you're important to me, but I don't feel clear right now to engage in conversation about this. And this is one of the tools that couples are taught if you go to a good coach or good therapist, which is not every moment is a good moment for a conversation, and not every time one of you feels like you got to talk. I want to talk about this. It doesn't mean that it's the best time. And so we teach couples to ask for permission. Say, hey, honey, I'd like to talk with you about this. Is now a good time? And the partner can say, no, now's not a good time. But, I know we have an agreement we've got to talk about this at some point. We encourage couples to resolve these things within 24 hours. So if it's not a good time now, the commitment agreement is that within 24 hours, you're going to find a time to do it. So, honey, I'm not available right now. I'm actually working on something very important. Can we talk about this tonight at 8 p.m.? Yes, that works for me. Okay, great. Because what you're really doing there is saying, okay, I hear you. Yes, we can talk about this. I will make myself available. This is important to me. And also honoring your own needs. I can't do it right now. And that's where I think that a lot of people get caught up, is not honoring their own needs and having some boundaries in that sense. And giving the partner that reassurance that, okay, we can talk about this. I'm going to make space and time for you. So it's little stuff like that I think can make a big difference for individuals. And couples have an opportunity to really take ownership, stop blaming each other for their problems. So it's possible to transform in that way and change behavior, without blame and criticism.
It sounds like whether you're in a good relationship or a bad relationship, if you want to use those words, regardless, the partner on the other side is a mirror for you to. That's what I'm hearing from that is when you want them to think of something a certain way, the same way that you do, or see something the same way that you do, or you get triggered by them because of something that they're doing that offends your viewpoint on the world or the way that you want things done. If you unconsciously go through that relationship, you'll look at them as the instigator of that feeling that you're having. But in the work that you do through conscious coaching, conscious relationship coaching, it sounds like you start to look at it as going back to the personal development side of things, that the greatest incubator for personal development, it's the ability to look at your partner as just one of the aspects of your partner. Look at your partner as a mirror to what is the work that I can do in myself to commit myself to this relationship in a positive way, rather than retaliating or lashing out at what he or she is doing in the moment.
Yeah. And I think that underneath everything, there's just a fear that people have that we're going to lose ourselves. in relationship, and we're afraid that we're not going to have that freedom that we want, or it's not going to be safe for us in some way, and that the relationship will consume us, or that I'm going to lose myself as an individual. I'm not going to be able to do the things I want to do. I'm going to have to make lots of sacrifice and give up a ton of stuff. And, the truth is about anything is some sacrifice is required. If you want a six-pack, hey, ice cream's not really on the agenda. And so everyone's got to make personal choices about that in terms of their values and what's important.
Candidly, that's probably the biggest reason in my own life why I've never really given myself over fully to any relationship, any romantic relationship anyways, is because of my resistance to giving up, the things that I feel like would be infringed upon by a relationship. And I know that I'm bringing this up because I think a lot of men feel very similar about that sort of thing. If they've been single or if they've been in a relationship that took it wasn't a constructive relationship. It did take a lot away from them. And that's the history that they have. That's the knowledge that they have of what relationship is. So for people like myself, for instance, or people who are, they know that this is something that they want, right? They don't have a relationship right now, or maybe they do have a relationship right now, but it's not where they know it could be. They're not showing up for their partner the way that they know that they could show up, or they're not showing up to attract their partner the way that they know that they could show up, and they know that their partner isn't doing the same. What would you recommend as a next step? What are some things that they need to ask themselves because you mentioned some relationships, it might be worth looking at and asking yourself, is this worth working on? Or is it something that's now in this moment is it's time to release it? What are some questions that people can start asking themselves to start this work in a meaningful way, the way that you're mentioning? And then what are the next steps to work with someone like you and find the path forward?
Well, I think there's so much there. And to speak to your point, I think that couples sometimes drive each other apart by creating such a painful experience for one another in conflict. Mm-hmm. And so really there's this whole new orientation about conflict. First of all, conflict is healthy in relationship. And I'm not talking about extreme abuse or violence, anything like that, but conflict is healthy. I disagree with you. I don't see it the way you see it. I like bananas. I want to have sushi for dinner. I want to go away for a week just on my own. I just want to go have an experience and tour museums or go play poker tournaments. So there's this conflict. We sort of disagree about what the priorities are. Maybe you value something more than I value something. So if you can orient to conflict is a pathway. Conflict is a growth opportunity. And some relationship therapists like to joke that, wow, there's a lot of opportunities, right? Here's another fucking growth opportunity. So conflict, though, it can represent a pathway to actually getting your needs met. And it's not always that you've got to leave the relationship, it's just maybe you've got to handle it in an empowered and respectful manner. So in conflict, each partner is really trying to get back part of their wholeness to get their needs met. And this connects to the childhood story. And the unconscious reason, the unconscious motivation for adult relationship is really to finalize and complete aspects of our childhood. And so that's why there's just a lot of pain that can be part of the process, because your partner, use this word mirror, your partner sort of reflects and mirrors back the undeveloped parts of yourself. And so that's really difficult to see. It's so difficult to see these kinds of things without being guided. And I'm a relatively young guy and a relatively young coach, so I'm still learning a lot about this. But I have worked with enough people to validate for myself that it just sort of seems true and is true. And there's been years of science and psychological study and philosophical debate about it. And there's a pretty good consensus that each partner is going to get hurt by the other at some point. Mm-hmm. So how can we create understanding around that? How can we create more insight and give people tools that have been proven to be scientifically effective, and bring them back to that sense of that connection? Yeah.
That reminds me a lot of the book by David Data, Way of the Superior Man. He talks about the polarity, the importance of polarity in relationship. He calls it masculine and feminine energy. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman who embodies it. And how those polarities ultimately come together to attract a very charged relationship. But as you said, sometimes, hopefully that's going to be used for positive charging, but every so often someone might get a little bit hurt, or someone's feelings might get a little challenged along the way. But it's a part of the process from what you're saying.
Well, yeah, the adage opposites attract is true. And each partner has typically repressed parts of their own partner, right? So this attracts us, it draws us in with pleasure. And this is exciting. And wow, geez, you're just so exotic, or whatever the feeling is. And then, it becomes painful because of conflict. And distress, conflict, these things diminish our vitality. They diminish our sense of aliveness. And you can start to feel anxious about the relationship and whether it's going to work, or whether it's going to be okay, or it's going to go the way you want.
Anecdotally, my mom said that the things that drew her to my dad, like she was just completely attracted to when they first started dating, are the things that piss her off the most now. All the qualities that attracted her to him. So I want to be respectful of your time. I know that we're coming up to an hour, and we've been speaking a lot about relationships. I'll be putting all of your contact information in the show notes. But I wanted to, you're also you're still a big part of the Samurai Brotherhood. And I know that in April you have a retreat coming up. So what is this retreat? I know what it is, but for people who are listening, what's this retreat? What do you guys do there? And what's the why behind it? What's the purpose? What can people expect by attending it?
Yeah, well, thanks for mentioning that. We do have an event April 23rd, 24th, and 25th, and it's a Warrior Weekend, and it's going to be led by the founder of our men's community, Phil Misselberger. And the Warrior Weekend, it's been around for a while in terms of concept, and many organizations have their own version of this. It's really an opportunity for men to pull away from all of their responsibilities and to engage in a conversation with other men about themselves or about certain subject matter, about integrity and being on purpose, and feeling a sense of empowerment, feeling a sense of direction in life. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of things that men get from that experience. Everyone can take something different away because there's a lot that goes on. And with COVID, we've been presented with a difficult circumstance where we can't take the guys out of the city and put 100 men, at an event. So we've run a few of them online, and that's been amazing because a lot of the charge and the energy and the fire is still there.
Awesome.
And we can also connect with men in different parts of the world, which is great, and we make it really, really affordable. The event's $200 Canadian. So in terms of a weekend event, with normally with airfare and accommodation and food, guys have to put up a lot more cash to be there. So this works, and it's 8 hours in total. There's going to be 4 workshops with some writing and homework assignments in between. And men are going to be connected as a large group, and there's some sharing that goes on with that. And Phil will talk about some of the main concepts addressed at the weekend, some of which already mentioned. And then men are put into breakout groups to get to know each other a little bit more and discuss some of the themes, and maybe discuss any action that they want to take in their life. And I find that this is a powerful experience, even if you've done men's work before, because we just guys don't socialize naturally in the way that women do, and we can tend to be kind of lone wolves. And I think for leaders, for really successful men who are maybe even on fire and have a lot of responsibility, they're building great projects that they're excited about, it is easy to lose focus of connecting with other people. It's easy to lose focus of maintaining friendships because of this mission and this maybe higher calling that you have. And so the Warrior Weekend has a bit of that too, that just sense of being with other guys and talking authentically about our experience. It's just a powerful container for that, and we're really, really excited to do more with the online weekends, and eventually in 2022 bring these back in person. Yeah, which will be great.
Nice. Well, I appreciate that. Again, I want to be respectful of your time. I have one last question that I'd like to ask you. And normally, when I ask this question, it's actually about your presence on social media. The question usually goes, people often see people on social media in a certain way, and they can be misunderstood because of the way that their images come out or whatever. People make their own reasons for why they follow people and whatnot. So they're often misunderstood. So the question usually is, how are you misunderstood, and what would you like people to know about you? I'd like to take it a little bit different. You have a social media presence. There's a lot of people that follow you, but I'm thinking back to that when I went to the open house, the first Samurai Brotherhood open house. And the thing that made me sign up for Samurai Brotherhood wasn't like, when I went, full disclosure, when I went to Samurai Brotherhood open house, I was like, I'm not going to join this cult, like that was my thought process. But the thing that made me decide to join was that everybody who got up, and all the men who had been a part of the group and got up and spoke and told their story, they had a certain something, a je ne sais quoi. Like there was just something about them. There was an energy, a vitality that I couldn't put words into, but I just felt it. And I think a lot of other people did. For men who know you in the Samurai Brotherhood, whether they're in the group or they've been to an open house or they will go to an open house, how are you often misunderstood being the leader that you are? And what do you wish more men knew about you as the Nick that you know yourself to be?
Well, I think one thing I'm surprised by sometimes is that men and women have sometimes, said that I can be intimidating. And, I'm a relatively tall guy. I'm just under 6'4", and a couple 100 pounds. So, I guess I'm of a big stature, like my dad and his dad. But recently found out I'm 2% Neanderthal. But, I think that people are intimidated by me. And I've even had friends say that they're intimidated by me. And so maybe there's something there for me to look at. I think I'm surprised by that because I don't wish anybody harm, and I really wish the best for people. And I can also be really silly and playful and singing songs around the house and being a goofball. So, there's probably a hidden part of myself that maybe I don't express sometimes at events or in public on the street. And I think we've all got, that part of ourselves. But it's definitely one thing for me that always surprises me. And at the same time, sort of like it because I'm being a men's leader is great, and I've got a lot of empowerment from that. And I'd like to think of myself as a tough guy. I'd like to think of myself as, I'm dangerous. But the truth is, I'm actually very sensitive. I'm a very sensitive person. Watching, listening, aware of things, and I love music. I like singing and writing songs, and I love running groups and talking with people about their lives, their hearts and minds. So. I think sometimes what we project on other people is just that. It's just our projection versus, who they really are. And, like I said, I suppose I like the idea that maybe people think I'm a big badass, right? And, I think that I actually am in a way, but just not in that traditional sense. And sort of like in the way that the Samurai Brotherhood is not a cult, I like to think of it as actually a healthy gang, a tribe of guys. And Men come and go. They decide to join. They decide to leave. We don't follow anybody in a white van. It's.
I should have clarified that. The Samurai Brotherhood is not a cult.
It's a really esoteric name, and we get that sometimes. People wonder what it is that we do, but it draws people who are open-minded and curious. Something about the name that works. But point being, it's sort of nice to be thought of as a badass, I guess, or intimidating or dangerous. And I think there's something that all men sort of strive to, that archetype of maybe the badass on a motorcycle who does what he wants. He gets what he wants from life. He doesn't take no shit. And man, he's just swimming in authenticity, right? So
that's awesome. I like it. Well, Nick, I appreciate your time, man. It's been really awesome to see you come into your own with coaching and what you're coaching too. This creating a space to create meaningful relationships and help people build something more than themselves, build that space between, as you call it. I think it's such a worthwhile calling, and I'm so happy to see that you're going after it. And I'll put all the links to your contact information in the show notes here so people can reach you. Is there any final thoughts or anything that you wanted to share with the listeners and the viewers before we sign off?
Well, I think I know you've got a personal development focus and health and fitness focus on your podcast. I think if you're a bodybuilder, you're a weightlifter, you know that a lot of the ROI, a lot of the gains you're going to get are in the kitchen, really about what you're putting into the system. And I think for individuals who want to work on themselves, and whether you want to be in a relationship or not, a lot of the ROI there is really about self-talk and the way that you treat yourself, and the way that you think about yourself. And I see a lot of people make big strides in that way. They stop beating themselves up, and they start making new choices about the way that they speak to themselves. And that takes time, it takes time to build confidence, but we practice and we keep going, and that's what an empowered person does. They don't allow the failure to mean something about them or keep them stuck or determine who they're going to be or how it's going to turn out. So I appreciate you having me on, and it's great to see you doing your thing and thriving and being a lean, green lifting machine.
I appreciate you.
And bringing goodness to the world. So thank you for that.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you, Nick. Thanks again for checking out this episode of the Power Plant Body Podcast. If you enjoyed it, I'd be grateful if you left it a rating and review on iTunes. When you leave it a rating and review, it really helps because it lets iTunes know, and they'll be more likely to promote it to others who could also benefit from hearing these conversations. Feel free to share this episode with people who could also benefit from Nick's insights into relationships and consciously creating the space between two people. You can find Nick on Instagram, where he shares a ton of wisdom on relationships and men's work. His Instagram handle is at Nick Solaczek. That's at NickSolaczek. And in his bio, he has a link to his coaching application form, the upcoming Samurai Brotherhood Warrior Weekend, and his blog, where he shares a ton of insights very regularly. Don't forget to head over to powerplantbody.com/free-tools to get your hands on a free copy of the Go Wheel PDF, along with tons of other free tools. I'm regularly adding new resources and tools to that page to help you create the best version of yourself, so you'll definitely want to bookmark it. You can find me on Instagram at The Vegan Trainer. That's at The Vegan Trainer. The Vegan Trainer. Feel free to send me a DM if you have any questions or suggestions for future episodes. Thank you again for spending some time with me and Nick today. I'll see you in the next episode.